In this episode, we sit with Gianna Lowry and Haylee Brodahl to discuss their experiences as substitute teachers in Southern Oregon. We also discuss how their perspectives on holistic education have developed during their time substituting. If you are interested in substituting in the area, stick around to the end of this episode to hear about what a day in the life looks like. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the HTLP. My name is Kylie Hornby.
And I am Kirshma Malkar. Today we're speaking to Gianna Lowry and Haylee Brodahl. Welcome. Could you tell us a little bit about yourselves for our listeners?
My name is Gianna Lowry, and I am originally from Windsor, California in Sonoma County. But I met these lovely ladies and got connected to the Center for Holistic Education during my 2 years at Southern Oregon University.
My name's Haylee Brodahl. I am originally from Vancouver, Washington, and I've been involved in the Holistic Teaching and Learning Club since my sophomore year of college, and I'm currently in my starting my second year of grad school.
When did your interest in holistic teaching begin, and could you tell us that story?
Substitute taught for about 2 years, both in the Phoenix Talent School District primarily, but then I also had some opportunities to teach in the Ashland School District.
I taught from about November to June of one school year in Medford School District, primarily elementary.
What got you guys, we're going to start back at the beginning. What got you interested in holistic education? How'd you get started?
I didn't know the term, but I think the first, piece under the huge holistic umbrella is social emotional learning for me. My boss at Boys and Girls Club, that's still my boss and a close friend of mine, who I've known for years now. She introduced it to me first, and she was one of the first people I've ever met who worked with kids that was so just aware of kids' emotions and needs and was so competent in that area. And she just definitely inspired me. She taught me what that was in the first place. I had no idea what that was in the first place. And thinking back on it, understanding that that was holistic education, I just didn't have the term for it yet. I think the first time I was introduced to it was probably my orientation at SOU. And Taya and Julissa came in and spoke about the club and kind of what it is. And I was like, oh, I like those people. They seem really cool. And then I think continuing on with the classes at SOU, I mean, it's integrated everywhere. And thank goodness for it too, because it has contributed so much to, I think, all of our lives, personally, professionally, academically. And so, I would definitely attribute it all to SOU and just how, I don't think I realized how big of a community holistic education was. I kind of thought it was just us kind of thing. It's not. After the conference, I realized, I mean, it's worldwide at this point, and there are little hubs of it everywhere of people that are having, the same rough, hits of reality about working with kids and education, just the world, and that, change needs to happen. And this is a pathway for it.
For me, I was not introduced to it until my spring term of sophomore year. It was on COVID and it was over Zoom, but I had human development with Dr. Green, and he totally just reminded me of Fred Rogers. And I remember him, even though it was on Zoom, plugging the Holistic Teaching and Learning Club. And so for the very end of the year, I decided to join a virtual meeting, and they haven't let me leave. And I have also always known the kind of teacher I've wanted to be. I want to be the teacher who, if you need your hair braided at school, do that. If you need a snack, I can help you with that. Even if you need deodorant, I want your needs to be met type of person. And then when I found the term holistic education, everything just clicked.
Did you always know that you wanted to be a teacher? Or was this a more recent development after exploring the field?
The first thing I wanted to be when I was little was a mom. The second thing I wanted to be was a teacher. So I've always wanted to be a teacher and work with kids. There was a zookeeper phase, but teachers always stuck.
I second that, except mine kind of hit 10 years later and I was 15. So a little bit different. I don't know what I really wanted to be when I was younger. I think I wanted to be like a dancer or a gymnast or something. I was very into sports as a kid, and I was very into dance and gymnastics specifically. But then I kind of got into my first job, which was as a swim instructor, and I did swim team in high school. And so I loved teaching swim. I loved like the light bulb moments. I feel like I've written that down, like the specific moment from when I was doing swim instructing. That was just this kid who was, just refusing to get in the water, would scream and cry on the side of the pool multiple days out of the week. And I was kind of going against what the lead teacher wanted me to do. And she just wanted me to go with the rest of the group, which honestly, looking back, maybe I should have. But I was so like, this was like a challenge. I just wanted to get this kid in the water because I knew that they could do it and they would be so fine once they did it. And so, but I knew that wasn't going to be from, their parent, like pushing them in and forcing them in. That's not how that kind of thing works. And so I would talk to them every day and we'd make some progress. And then the end lesson hit the next day, it would go right back to the beginning and we'd work again. And it took about a week, but the kid finally got in the water and loved it and swam like a fish. And so I think it's just like, you could see like the switch in their eyes. Shining eyes is a term that Dr. Green loves to use. But the term shining eyes, you could just see the difference for this kid. Their whole world changed when it came to how they saw the pool, how they saw water in general, how they saw like their own ability to swim. And I think it is honestly the same thing for kids in school, especially when you maybe have a little bit of an older kid who has had negative experiences with teachers in school in the past. I've had a few kids that have been kicked out of schools over and over again. They have to keep trying new districts because schools are kicking them out. And with that kind of background there, they are going to be on the side of the hypothetical pool, shivering and crying and very scared. And so I think it just takes a person to, work with them and, get them there because every kid can do it. They just need someone who believes in them kind of thing. And so I think that was like the first moment where I was like, yep, this is what I want to do. And I'm content. And that's what I did. I kept working with kids and then ended up substitute teaching. That's when it really solidified teaching for me, for sure. I knew that I wanted to do it, but I think it was very validating because substitute teaching is very difficult. It is a very hard thing to come into a classroom where you don't know anybody and, be this new person every day. So it was such a positive experience for me. And that was just like Haylee said earlier, it's easier when you have your own classroom. And so I was like, if I can do substitute teaching at this age, at this time, I can be a teacher in my own classroom and succeed and do fine.
In what ways have you found public schools to be welcoming to the ideals of holistic education? And then do you guys have any story to share with us?
I know for me in the Medford School District, social emotional learning is part of the curriculum. So there's many schools who really took a hold of that in certain classrooms where there was daily morning meetings. Sometimes there was afternoon meetings of like, what went well for today? Some schools are very outdoor welcoming, especially a Rouge outdoor community school that I substitute taught twice. It's a community school, so it is more based on the community needs, and it's more of a rural area. The methods of discipline was more traditional, but some of them were more sit down, let's talk about it, let's see what the root of the problem is.
I think I had very similar experiences in the Phoenix Talent School District. That's where I mainly was a substitute teacher. I was lucky enough to form very close relationships with the teachers and both of the principals that I worked with, and they would consider themselves to be holistic educators and administrators, and they definitely show that in their work. And I feel like if the administrator in a school is supportive and welcoming of that and embodies it themselves, that's going to carry on for the staff. And it definitely allowed me to feel very comfortable leading circles and talking about emotions. And I mean, I did my capstone project on restorative justice practices in the same school that I subbed at the most. And so they're very open to those things, especially in Ashland. When I would sub in Ashland, I found that even more so. It was so normalized. It was just that's how it was there. And I would say the majority of the teachers embodied that in amazing ways. And it was really cool to be able to sub. Sometimes I know Haylee has to like worked as like an IA sometimes. And in that you get to really work with the teachers, not like for the teachers when they're gone. And so that was nice to see kind of how the culture really is when you see the teacher embodying those things.
That's awesome. What have you found to be the most rewarding part of substitute teaching?
Ooh, there's so many things. I have like absolutely loved substitute teaching, and I recommend it for anybody, especially those who are aspiring educators. But I would say that the most rewarding thing kind of breaks into two parts. It's the teachers and it's the students. It was so amazing getting to form such close bonds, a lot more than I thought I would, with a lot of the teachers that I got to sub for and work with when I was an IA and a head teacher. I learned so much from them. And so that was such a rewarding thing. I was being poured into constantly. The like validation I was receiving for the work I was doing and the feedback they'd hear from their kids was just so amazing, and it just made my heart so happy to hear that. And then just the relationships with the students. I think working as a substitute, there's kind of this idea that, especially with my substitute teachers growing up, they never remembered our names ever. But I think I remembered that from my experiences in public school growing up, and so I made a very conscious effort to curb that practice and to learn kids' names, learn about their interest, talk to them, and carry on those conversations a week later when I'd see them again. Um, and I think that the students really appreciated that, and that was definitely a change for them. And so, yeah, I would just say the relationships are huge for me. And so I think both the relationships I formed with the teachers and with the students was the most rewarding part for me.
Gianna, I want to really quickly explore that connection with your students. Could you share a story with our listeners?
First grade class that I had taught when they were in kindergarten the year before, at the very end of the school year. I'd only gotten my actual like head substitute teaching permit like a few months before. Didn't teach at the school very often. And I had them in kindergarten one time for a half day. And I came back the following year, and when they were in first grade, partway through the year. And so a lot of time has passed. And the majority of the kids remembered me and ran up and hugged me and knew my name and were saying that they missed me. And it was just like, I don't think that people realize how much impact you have as like an educator who is caring. Like kids see that. They see right through it so fast, and it can lead to such an impact. And so, yeah, I would say that's one of my favorite memories that stuck with me, and just example of the proof that you do have a huge impact on kids in whatever capacity you work with them. And so it's really important to make sure that you are being compassionate and considerate, and ensuring some sort of mutual respect, and just showing them that you care. A lot of kids need that, and they don't have many adults in their lives that that can show some genuine care towards them. So it's important to do that, I think.
That's a nice memory.
For me, the short answer is the kids, of course. And I think it is important, those connections. Like Gianna, I made a point when we were doing attendance, I would say their name. I want them to say here and raise their hand so I can look at them and try to remember their face for the day. I only got a few names because I'm awful with names, but I am really good with faces. I even had a kid last week at the camp that I am working at right now was like, did I have you as a substitute teacher? And she did. I actually got to go on a field trip with them. And for that field trip, it was towards the end of the year. And I think two grades for each school and all of Medford School District got to go and see Finding Nemo that one of the schools was putting on. And it was so nice because I would look around and be like, I subbed for that class. I know that class. I said hello to this first grade class who came up running and hugging me. It was just really nice. And also, if I were to sub in their classroom, but then maybe a few months down the road, I was their PE teacher, they would remember me, or vice versa. And there was one school where I subbed at quite a bit And most of the kids ended up liking me because I was their PE teacher, and it was just so fun and rewarding. They also did like me because I had stickers, because every once in a while you do have to bribe as a substitute. So stickers are your best friends.
That would work on me too. I love stickers. I'm curious, do you prefer to sub for younger or older students?
I personally want to teach third, fourth, fifth grade. So I did a lot more substituting in those grades. I did do kindergarten for a day and a half, and they were fun, but it was like herding cats for me. And it didn't help they gave me the flu. But I don't mind doing first grade or second grade. But my favorite was doing PE and or fourth grade. I think fourth grade is a super sweet spot. Another thing that I found really rewarding about substitute teaching is I always look a substitute teaching report with my name and my email, even my phone number. And it was so nice whenever I got a text from teachers saying, I love the feedback, or hey, like I have a dentist appointment. Can you come and stay for me?
I'm on the same boat as Haley. I definitely prefer the older grades. At first, when I first started substitute teaching, I wanted to be with the kindergartners, the first graders, and the second graders. That's the group that I worked at Boys and Girls Club, which was my primary experience with kids before substitute teaching. And I think I just in a school setting, I really love being able to connect with kids. They get creative in a very like artistic, beautiful way, very free way as a young child. But as they get older, the kind of development that happens, like their critical thinking skills improve. They're thinking about like these huge ideas and like bringing it down and making connections to themselves and their friends and others and just the world. And they know just so much like more information. They're like sponges. And so I just really grew to love third and above, honestly. And a kind of surprise favorite grade for me was sixth grade. And this wasn't at a K through six school. This was at a middle school. And I, before this, always said I would not teach middle school. I would not sub there. I remember my substitutes in middle school getting just made fun of and like just brutally kind of bullied by my classmates. And I didn't want that for myself. I was a little scared of middle schoolers. But then in my second year of subbing, my first group that I subbed for at the middle school was the exact like collection of 3 different elementary schools of fifth graders I'd all taught all in one space. And it was like the coolest thing to see who was friends with who from like completely other schools all coming together. And I'm like, yes, that makes so much sense. And they get so creative. And I'm just like, I'm amazed. One of my favorite stories from a specific like sixth grader was this person who I had when they were in fifth grade, and they like came up to me, said hello, and then they instantly got out their laptop and showed me this whole novel they had been working on since like third grade because they have the district Chromebooks and can continue to work on their stuff throughout the years. And then that led to a whole conversation of other kids saying that they've been doing the same thing. And so it's just like that kind of like deeper level of creation and thinking. I love so much. And so middle school ended up becoming my favorite. And I subbed there honestly the most in my last leg of subbing.
It is so nice to hear that, your guys' experiences, especially with the older grades, because I know that I want to teach the older grades. So hearing that connection that you guys were able to make as substitutes just gives me a lot of hope. How has substitute teaching affected your perspective of the use of holistic education?
For me, it is kind of hard to implement holistic education as a substitute because oftentimes you are stepping into a classroom for 6 hours one day. I do notice if you're there for multiple days, it's easier to implement holistic education, but it also, you're walking into a school where you maybe don't necessarily know the discipline practices and the class of the school and of the specific teacher. So it is kind of hard to put your own twist on it. You typically do need to go with what the teacher has in place and what the school has in place, but there's always room for doing holistic stuff. There's been times where I've had lessons go crazy, askew, where we've just paused. We are going to circle up and we are going to talk about it. Another time, it was one of their recess monitors last day. And I think they did silent reading or something. They were supposed to do silent reading and it was only a half day. But I said if they silent read for 20 minutes, the rest of the time given, they can make cards for the recess monitor. So I think just showing kids that you are human, you have emotions, you make mistakes. I always admit when I've made a mistake, and I make a lot of spelling mistakes, especially, and also with lessons. I'll be like, hey guys, this is my bad. I did this part wrong. But it is hard to implement. But everybody, when I talk to teachers, they all tell me it's so much easier when you have your own classroom.
I think I agree when it comes to trying to implement, and it is really hard when because I mean, even if you are subbing for a head teacher and you're not actually seeing them teach, you can just tell by the way that their students are responding to you, by their classroom, their organization systems, the way that they have their schedule set up, their lesson plans, everything. And especially hearing like feedback from the students about how their teacher is. And you just kind of can sense it out being in a classroom even for a day, what the normal environment is for that space. And sometimes your vibe doesn't really match up with that vibe, and that's okay. But I think one of the biggest takeaways that took me a very, very, very long time to kind of understand, is that it doesn't have to be a like a perfect thing. Many times I tried with this first grade class trying to do a restorative circle, didn't work for that age group, didn't work for that specific group at all. Had to scrap that. I think it's a beautiful practice. I love it very much, and I think that it can be really beneficial for kids, but it just didn't work that day, and that's okay. And there's a lot of other specific holistic practices that are a little more well known that I've tried to implement, and it just did not work with that group of kids. But I think my understanding that I have finally like come to is that it's not what you're doing, like the certain things that you're implementing, or how it looks on the surface. It's how you embody it yourself, and it's your energy that you're bringing into the space sets the tone for the whole day. If you come in there super stressed out, and because I've been both people, I've been the super stressed out one, I've been the very calm one, your students reflect that immediately. It's like looking in a mirror. It really is, and it impacts them so quickly. And so if you come in really like revved up, really stressed out, being quick to respond, not looking to dig deeper into behavior and just taking it at surface value, like all of those things that kind of go along with how your heart is feeling that day, your kids are going to reflect that. But it's about, trying to check yourself before you go in for the day. Of course, we're all human. We have our emotions, and that's, super important too, to carry that. But doing our best to try and be considerate and understand that we have emotions, they have emotions. Everybody's a little tornado of emotions in their own body at all times. And just trying to be more understanding every day. The other huge thing is apologizing. That is something I've done many times, especially in like a fifth grade classroom when I'm trying to teach a math lesson on fractions. I wasn't the best at that growing up. And so I think apologizing, like Haylee said, is huge and just shows your humility. And it's trying to model the behavior that you want to see from your kids that day will help them do that.
What are small ways that we can bring reflection and metacognition into any classroom environment?
Well, first of all, metacognition, right, is talking about like the way that you are thinking about your thinking, which is super important. And then reflection, I feel like can be implemented everywhere. I love reflection. I think at SOU specifically in that program, we all have been taught that reflection is very important, especially for metacognition, understanding your own thought process, the way that you view things in all the different realms. But when it comes to working with students, I would say just trying to implement it as much as possible and get it to be a very common practice for both of those things. The more that you do it, the easier it becomes. One of my favorite strategies when working with kids is allowing them to chat with their peers next to them, or kind of let them think about their background knowledge and then chat with a neighbor, share out as a group. I think independent time is really important for kids, but the real growth that really happens is kind of sandwiching it, where you allow them to speak with your partner, kind of get those thoughts out. Maybe think they might be wrong on a problem or something. It's a little less stressful situation, and then they get to share out and hear, oh, I was thinking that too, or oh, I've never thought about that before, kind of thing. And so I feel like that is huge for growth. And then allowing them to come back into their partnership or just themselves and really think about those ideas. And then for reflection, put it everywhere, especially when it comes to, I think, specific behavioral struggles with students, emotional struggles, any sort of conflict that happens. I think that managing that, discussing that, and then reflecting on it. What happened? How do you feel about that? What do you feel like you need right now? Those kind of things. Body checks, self checks, like asking them, how they're doing on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scale. Just simple things to allow them to reflect on themselves and others, I feel like are super important throughout the day.
I think for me, for metacognition, something that I notice a lot with when substitutes come in is when they're asked to do something, or maybe like something on a worksheet, they say, I don't know, or I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I can't do this. So I always like them to ask me what their thought process is. And I'm like, I know you can do this. So maybe if we're reading a passage and we have to answer a question, well, okay, let's reread this page, or maybe let's reread this paragraph because I secretly know the answers in the paragraph. So I just like them to slow down and tell me what they're thinking. And then when it comes to reflection, I admit I didn't do tons of reflections with the students because there were some days where I was just trying to get to the end of the day, but I actually did a lot of reflecting. At the end of the day, I would do my teacher report, and I would think about what happened throughout the day. Obviously, I would write down anything that the teacher needed to know. Sometimes I would talk with some of the admin or staff if something specific happened. And honestly, I sometimes seeked out outside advice. There was a lot of times where I would call my mom, call my dad, even call my boyfriend and say, I just need to talk through this one scenario that happened, or maybe the whole day or something of like, this happened. I need help understanding it.
I did a lot of reflecting as well, especially on those really hard days. And like the second I sat down in my car, it all just came flowing. But I think an easy strategy that I actually just started doing with some of my campers and working at a summer camp this summer, and something that I started doing with my group that I am pretty proud of, because this is not the culture of this camp at all, has been two things. It's been opening up with a circle and a pass the bowl. You guys, I taught this entire camp of like 200 students pass the bowl from the preschool. I'm so happy about it, and they all do it and they all know it, and it only took like a week, but we'll do that. We'll pass the bowl, and you get to greet your neighbor or share something about yourself, share your name. So that's good connection. But then on the reflection piece, we do a pass the bowl with a rosebud and thorn. We've also added in a gardener, so someone who has helped you that day, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I think just like simple things like that, like reflection, closing circles, like morning meetings and closing circles are such a good way to like sandwich in the chaos of the day and open it up well, and then reflect. Try and allow those kids to process before they're just pushed out of the door once the bell rings and they have to go home and enter a completely different space that you don't even know the reality of. And so, just giving them opportunities to process as much as possible.
And do you guys think that your methods on reflection come from being students of it in your coursework at Southern Oregon University? Or was this a practice that you had developed before finding the field of holistic education?
I feel like it's a really good combination of a lot of those. I think that the way that I've approached working with kids has definitely developed over time. I learn more every year, every month, every day, every hour. I am learning more and more and more. And I think, especially attending SOU, being a part of the holistic community, learning from a lot of professionals and people that embody it and have studied it and know it so well. I think just learning the importance of it and seeing proof. I mean, we've all done a bunch of research papers on a lot of this stuff at SOU, and just seeing the numbers, seeing that it does work. Social emotional learning is very important for kids' well-being, and just their whole development. And so I think also just trial and error, trying things out for ourselves, like in the club, for example, like doing circles, having reflection periods, journaling, things like that, how good it feels for all of us to do. It's like, oh, kids are definitely going to want to do something like that too. It might look a little bit different for them, But, I think experiencing it myself and my own academic growth, my own personal growth, seeing how good it feels and how important it is for me and a lot of people around me, and then wanting to implement that for my students.
I also agree. I think it's part nature, part nurture. I've always wanted to be a teacher. Even when I was 8, I wanted to play with the 5-year-olds and like play teacher with them. So there's definitely some nature, but on the nurture side, there's so much I've learned from SOU and all the amazing professors, especially Dr. Green and Dr. Kim. And again, I'm also learning every day. You learn something new every time you substitute. You learn that this works with this group and this does not work with this group. So just gotta trial and error. And I also think my personal reflection style of talking it out with someone, I've always been that way, but I do understand there are people who are not that way, and maybe talking it out is journaling.
Have you received feedback from teachers or admin in the field on your approach on substitute teaching?
I don't think I have had one piece of negative feedback from a teacher, at least not that they've like told me to my face or anything, but it's been pretty overwhelmingly positive. And I think that is just through embodying, just being caring, being a human, being kind, not being too harsh. And just, yeah, I think that is the key to it. And yeah, so it's been pretty good. I think specifically because the feedback isn't like from a teacher, oh, you're the fun sub. You don't force them to do any of their work and they can just watch movies all day. Because I remember that's who the fun sub was growing up. It's not like that. It is the kids feel safe, happy, regulated, and they feel heard and they had a good time and they want to see you again. Will you please come back? And that is the meaningful feedback. That's how you know that you're doing something right. And so I think that kind of thing led me to continue on the conversations with the teachers, having like positive feedback like that. And that's what led to a lot of my fairly close relationships with all the teachers that I worked with, who are all so awesome.
I would also agree. My feedback was a primary positive because it is a substitute teacher shortage. So sometimes there are people who have no educational experience, maybe not even a ton of child experience. And so going in as an education major, someone wanting to be a teacher, I would always, if anyone asked, oh, I'm in my first year of the Master's of the Art of Teaching program, I'm going to be student teaching next year. I personally believe maybe like senior year of education programs should somehow figure out an opportunity to get those students into the classrooms substitute teaching, because it is the best experience. You've got your capstones, you've got your practicums, but there's no experience like actually jumping in. But most of the time I get overwhelmingly good feedback. Every time I come in, and the office ladies know me, they say like, welcome back, we're glad you're here, like thank you for being here. And sometimes, they'll call me of like, hey, are you available tomorrow for the same class or like for a different class? I've also gotten positive feedback on my substitute teacher reports, because I've seen some subs leave like a sticky note with like a few things, versus I like to go through with each activity of like morning meeting went great, like something like that. Math, we got through this problem, but we didn't get to this problem. Like if there was a certain problem of like, oh, A, B, and C kid, like we're not paying attention, I had to redirect them multiple times, or maybe stuff like that. But also, there's one more thing. And if I see a substitute teacher that I previously subbed for, or I know I'm going to sub for them, I like to introduce myself with like, hey, I'm your substitute teacher on Friday next week, or hey, I was your substitute teacher last Tuesday. It's really nice to sit there and connect with the teacher and go over how either that day went, or just like, oh, the kids loved you. Because I've had teachers tell me substitute horror stories of teachers falling asleep during presentations, and not doing math to go play gaga ball.
Do you have any advice for aspiring educators that are interested in substitute teaching?
Learn names for sure, best you can. It does no good if you see a kid kicking somebody else across the room to say, hey, you, stop that. That does nothing. You need to know names for safety reasons, for connection reasons. I noticed a lot of teachers would go really hands off and just sit behind the desk with their feet kicked up. And even if it wasn't like throwing on a movie, just handing out the math lesson, not offering help, not even accepting a student walking up to them and asking for help. They would just say, sorry, I don't know. Figure it out. I can't help you right now. And, I have seen that with my own eyes when I had another substitute next door. And this was during my practicum. But I saw like the duality between two substitutes. Those two like fifth grade classrooms. Both had trainings. I saw one substitute over here, one substitute right next door. You could literally see the energy between the two rooms, like standing with both doors open between one substitute that was just sitting behind the desk. All the students were just working, struggling because it was both math lessons, and the other teacher who was amazing. I love her. But this substitute teacher was just open and talking through the problems and very theatrical in a sense. And it was just like, it was like night and day. And so after seeing that, it's just, that's my advice, is to be very hands-on. Even if you don't know it, help them figure it out. If it's never a good thing just to say, sorry, I can't do anything. I don't know. It's always good to try and help. And like what Haylee said, I do that too. I will always introduce myself to teachers that I've subbed for them before, or I'm going to be subbing for them. Go shake their hand, go talk to them for a moment. That makes such a huge difference. And just, connect with the students and connect with the teachers. Those are like my top three.
I've got a couple little lists, I guess. I also agree with all of Gianna said. If you're like me and you're not the best with learning names, at least try to learn a few, but make sure when you are taking attendance, you are not just staring at the computer screen waiting for it here. Make sure you look up and figure out who it is so you can kind of get that baseline. I would always introduce yourself as well in the mornings. Sometimes if there is multiple teachers of that grade, or it's even the teacher next door, a lot of the times they will come and check in with you. If not, it is sometimes good to go check in with them, because there's always one little thing that goes wrong, whether it's technology or you have a clarifying question, it's your first time at the school, you don't know where to pick them up from the blacktop. I will say there's going to be those great days where it's awesome, you're so excited to be a teacher, and there's going to be those days where you're just trying to hold it together until you get to your car. But those are the days where you will learn the most. And so I would say, just don't give up. Try your best. Put a smile on every day. Greet the kids at the door. It's a new day every day. And just show that you're human, and always reach out for help. Offices are willing to help you, because again, the expectations for substitute teachers are honestly right now pretty low. So if you think you're doing a bad job, you are probably not. You are fine. You are great. We are just happy that you are there.
So as we bring our time here to a close, I just wanted to give you guys the opportunity to share what you're doing now, or if there's anything you guys are wanting to promote.
So I have officially moved out of Southern Oregon area, and I'm living back home in Sonoma County. I am currently attending Sonoma State University in Rohnert Park. I absolutely love it so much. I'm so happy. My professors are great. I just got done with the summer class, and I just got a lot of my stuff rolling for the multiple subject credential program. So I'll be doing my student teaching this year. And I'm happy to announce this is a huge stride for any aspiring educators. Paid student teaching, let's go. Which is amazing. There was a residency grant that the entire county is doing in partnering with SSU. And so there's different kind of subjects that they all focus on for all the different areas. And it's in like 6 different districts in the area. And yeah, so that is super cool. And I'm so happy. And I wish that Oregon would get on it when it comes to paid student teaching. A lot of us have been involved with union work for aspiring educators, and that is something that we have all been fighting for. And so, yes, happy to announce that. I'll be in a 3rd grade classroom in the Petaluma School District. I've only met my mentor teacher on the phone, but she is incredible. She sounds so amazing. We align so well. She loves like outdoor education, social emotional learning. She just seems like such a great person. And so that's pretty much my updates now. I guess if I have anything to promote or shout out, I guess my podcast, the Holistic Educator Hotline, on Spotify. And I think that's pretty much it from my end.
I'm extremely jealous. I'm also going to be student teaching this year because I'm my 2nd year of the SOU MAT program. I'm going to have 2 placements and neither one are going to be paid. So I'm so happy that you're able to get paid because it's truly something. I was going to say, I'm not really promoting anything, but if I would promote something, paid student teaching, because honestly, it can be such a burden. Here, I have to pay for how much of tuition, I've got rent, I need to get groceries. And so it's hard because you're working. Sometimes every program's different. I'm starting with 3 hours in fall term, 4 hours in winter, and full day in spring. I need to be able to afford to live. So it's extremely hard when you do not have any source of income, or you have to find a source of income outside of the hour where you are student teaching and when you are going to class. So promote paid student teaching, please, for everyone in all 50 states.
That sounds awesome. We're so excited to hear that you guys are doing great in your programs. We hope that you guys let us know any updates because we're just so excited for you. And we know that you guys will be great teachers and you are just one step closer to that.
This conversation sparked many questions for us as students about what the average day for a sub looks like in the Southern Oregon area. Gianna and Haylee stayed on after our interview to illustrate further.
Could you walk us through what a day of substitute teaching looks like for you?
So the first that I like to do, I log on to the computer and go on to whatever things they do attendance and email. But the second thing I like to do is I go on YouTube and I will do some morning music. Sometimes it's a jazz with like a sunset or like a coffee shop ambiance. But I often start with, hello, my name's Miss Brodahl. You can call me Miss B. I'm going to be your substitute teacher today. If there's anything specific, I always get the question of how old you are. So I always hit them back with how old do you think I am? I get some, are you 16? And then every once in a while, a kid really stabs me in the heart and asks if I am 60. And then by the end of the day, I usually will give them stickers if they're good. I also prompt them with the stickers or some sort of reward potentially, depending on the difficulty of the class. I also start the morning when they come in, I stand at the door and say good morning to everybody.
Are you expected to pick the students up / drop them off from recess and elective times, or do they find their way around?
You typically go and pick them up. Every once in a while, they'll have a transition from like recess to lunch or from recess to PE. But most of the time you are taking them somewhere and then picking them up.
Okay. I would say kind of what you might expect, like for someone who might be listening to this and has never done substitute teaching before, is kind of thinking about it. It depends on the grade, what your schedule is too. Like the kindergartners are eating lunch at 10:40 in the morning, and that's how that is most of the time. And the fifth graders are eating a little bit later in the day. And so their schedule is going to look a little bit different. But very similar to Haylee, I always head inside, settle my stuff down, and I always put on music. Always, always, always. And I just try and get a feel for the space, especially if it's a classroom I haven't been in before. Um, and usually the teacher, it's very common to know that you have a lesson plan that you have to read. Pretty much all the time, a teacher is going to lay out everything so organized for you. And having everything in piles. There's only been like 2 times where that hasn't happened, and it was because they had to leave for an emergency and they just handed me a lesson plan. But oftentimes that will not happen, and you'll have everything laid out for you, all your copies made, everything done, and ready to go for the day. So I like to get organized with that, get familiar with the schedule. I have a really hard time when it comes to time management and keeping an eye on the time. There's been a few times where I've brought a group late to lunch or late to specials just because I lost track of time. And so making sure that you're keeping track of time throughout the day, and just, getting to know the space. I will look at the attendance sheet beforehand, honestly, and practice pronouncing names just in case there's any names that I might struggle with. Just because that is like, I feel like the most common experience, I feel like, as someone who grew up in public schools with substitute teachers, is teachers absolutely butchering names. And I never wanted that to be me. And so that's always been a fear. And so I'll practice names if I have time. Get familiar with the technology. Luckily, in the Phoenix Talent School District, their technology in my second year is pretty streamlined. And so you get onto like their TVs, make sure everything's connected and good, and you're pretty much good to go for projecting and things like that. Once you learn one projector system, you can kind of apply your knowledge elsewhere. And yeah, similar to what Haylee said, usually you'll pick them up from recess or lunch. There's been a few times where instructional assistants will do that, and that's kind of in the schedule. Oh, which is so nice. Or they'll have back-to-back specials. And so the teacher's switching them that way.
How do you go about reporting your experiences at the end of the day?
Haylee kind of touched on it. I like to go kind of a chronological order. And so usually I will just hit the main chunks of the day, whether that's morning, middle, afternoon, whether that's each activity. But it's kind of like 2 major parts that you want to hit. It's the actual content, and then it's how it went with the kids. And so usually I will always try and do like shout outs, like superstars, and then maybe kiddos that are, had a hard time that day. I always give more context, maybe suggest checking in with that child, maybe my assumptions as to what could be going on, what could have happened with another classmate, just giving as much information as I have, because I don't love the double discipline thing. Not like I discipline kids very much, but it's like, so the concept of like, you have that child right there in front of you. They just got an argument with their classmate. They just hit their classmate. Something went, whatever, in the day. You have the opportunity to handle that right there and then, and let that kid have a better day tomorrow. It should always be a new day tomorrow. And so if I'm going to leave a note about that, I will always know if I have already handled it. If there's been some times where they needed to go to the principal, which I don't love doing, but it was an extreme case, I will write that in there as well. And if I've already handled it, I will suggest, I don't think it needs to be handled tomorrow. Maybe just do a little check-in, some extra care. Handle with extra care kind of thing. It's always sandwiching it and never saying like, this kid was bad, period. Because that's what I've seen before on substitute notes that have been left the day before. And that doesn't do anything, because then that teacher's just going to come back the next day and, get upset at that kid. And the kid probably doesn't even remember what they did yesterday. They probably don't even know what they ate for breakfast. You know what I mean? It's like they're in the here and now. And so I think it's important to handle it in the here and now, but do a detailed report of what happened.
Like I said, I do the subject, and then I like to do kind of an end of the day overview. If an incident happened during a certain time, I will put that. If something happened during math, I will put that in math. I will do kind of an overview of the end of my day. And then if something happened, maybe repeatedly with some kids, or there was a big incident, I will say like specifically, student didn't have the greatest day. They were kicking people in line. I will kind of say whatever, but I also similar to Gianna of you said superstar students. At the bottom, I always put outstanding students. And if I notice a student did something particularly awesome, I always like to write it down of like, oh, I witnessed this, I saw them do this. So definitely highlight the good students and don't just highlight the bad students.